My personal view at this point is the Chinese government is the enemy. China is not our friend. And we tend to have a habit of refusing to accept that a country is our enemy, particularly one that we trade with. We set up the economic conditions in China where China can thrive in ways it could not except for benefiting from us. And China has now turned that on its head and has weaponized it against us. And I think Rubio is right. I love free trade. I do. But we're not free, and it's not free trade when the Chinese can control our economy. They can control supplies of our medicines, control the supplies of our food, control the supplies of our military industrial complex, control supplies related to our infrastructure. We're not free. It's not free trade, and we've got to think differently about China. And Rubio, to his credit, is willing to think differently about China. And this goes to his philosophy and Donald Trump's from his hearing.
But ultimately, under President Trump, the top priority of the United States Department of State will be the United States. The direction he has given for the conduct of our foreign policy is clear. Every dollar we spend, every program we fund, every policy we pursue must be justified by the answer to one of three questions. Does it make America safer? Does it make America stronger? Or does it make America more prosperous?
That's Rubio's opening statement, and that'll be his philosophy. That's a good one to have, far better than what we're getting from the President Biden administration.
Want to be on the show?
Hello.
I love your show.
Call Eric now at 877-973-7425.
Welcome back. It is Erick Erickson here. The phone number 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, I would be delighted to have you. I meant to bring this up the other day, and I didn't get a chance. A judge has ruled that American Airlines mismanaged employee retirement funds by investing in ESG accounts, environmental, social, and governance accounts. In fact, the judge says that it is well known that ESG funds actually underperform the markets. This is from Zero Hedge. The judgment came as part of a 2023 lawsuit filed against American Airlines and the company's Employee Benefits Committee. The class action alleged the defendants violated their duty of loyalty under ERISA, the Employee Retirement Income Security Act, which requires that fiduciaries managing retirement investments must act in the best financial interest of the participants. Defendants are alleged to have mismanaged their retirement assets, 401k plans, when they hired investment managers pursuing ESG policies, including BlackRock. The plaintiffs said BlackRock pursued an agenda to convert their retirement plan core index portfolios into ESG funds, and that BlackRock's actions harm retirement plan participants because those investments pursue socio-political outcomes rather than financial returns. Judge Reed O'Connor from the U.S. District Court of Northern District of Texas agreed, saying, quote, the facts compellingly demonstrate that defendants breached their fiduciary duty by failing to loyally act solely in the retirement plan's best financial interests. The defendants allowed their corporate interests as well as BlackRock's ESG interests to influence management of the plan. The judge said ESG investments often underperform traditional investments by roughly 10%. This is a quote. For instance, when compared to S&P 500 and Russell 1000 indices in 2023, ESG funds dramatically underperform non-ESG funds, with ESG-related funds returning about 8% compared to 14% for both indices. Ha-ha! Another blow to ESG. Good. It really actually is a scam, and it needs to be gotten rid of. Now, one of the institutions in this country that's actually been pointing out the fallacies within DEI and ESG is Hillsdale, because they recognize the difference between education and indoctrination. And they'd like to show you what they mean. And all you have to do is go to erickforhillsdale.com, and you can take one of their great courses for free. They're typically 6 classes, 30 minutes each by video. You do at your own pace. And they've got a variety of interests for you. They've got a course on C.S. Lewis, the one on the literary and theological themes of Genesis, one on the Constitution, Constitution 101. By the way, if you're very interested in the Constitution, I recommend that one. Being someone who's deeply interested in the Constitution, I learned a lot from it, even having gone to law school and focused on con law. All you got to do is go to erickforhillsdale.com, ERICK, erickforhillsdale.com, and sign up today with Hillsdale College. Start a great relationship with Hillsdale College at erickforhillsdale.com today. Welcome back. It is Erick Erickson across the nation. Glad to have you with me. The phone number is 877-973-7425. If you would like to be on the program, I would be happy to have you. We got breaking news. Hamas and Israel have agreed to a ceasefire and a hostage swap. 33 hostages remaining alive will be released, along with hundreds of Palestinian prisoners. On top of all of that, there's other breaking news right now. New York City has just been thrown on a lawsuit against ExxonMobil, BP, and Shell. Today, Supreme Court Justice Anar Patel that's a state Supreme Court, which is actually in New York. They're very pretentious. The lower courts are called the Supreme Courts, and then the Court of Appeals is the Supreme Court in New York. The state Supreme Court Justice Anar Patel said the city could not claim its climate-conscious residents were sensitive to how fossil fuels cause climate change, and then claim that the oil companies were duping the residents of New York City. Essentially, New York filed a lawsuit suing oil companies, saying that they were lying to consumers about their role in climate change, while also arguing that their citizens deeply cared about and were knowledgeable of climate change. So the judge has thrown out the case this morning as the left tries to weaponize courts to affect their environmental agenda. Left's not having a good day. They're not having a good day about Pete Hegseth either. They are really, really upset that Pete Hegseth might actually get confirmed. It is somewhat funny listening to the sad conversation of Mike Barnacle on MSNBC this morning.
You have Pete Hegseth. You know, he will be probably the next Secretary of Defense. He wasn't asked about shipping lanes in the South China Sea and the dangers that lurk there. He wasn't asked about AI and its impact on weapons systems. He wasn't asked that for a reason. They probably knew, the Republicans as well as the Democrats, that he wouldn't know what he was talking about, and he didn't. But he was talking about his lust for better war fighters and greater lethality. We do pretty good in both departments. Yes. War fighting and lethal war fighting. We've done pretty good at that for quite some time. We have the greatest, strongest, most powerful, most feared armed forces in the history of the world. The history of the world.
History of the world. Not a close second, Mike. Not a close second. And go ahead.
It was depressing to watch. That's what this system has come to. Totally depressing.
I mean, yeah.
Oh, it was depressing because okay, let's back up here. Let me see if I can roll this back here.
Probably knew, the Republicans as well as the Democrats, that he wouldn't know what he was talking about.
Okay, wouldn't the Democrats want to expose his ignorance on those issues? I mean, you had what's her name, Tammy Duckworth, asking about Asian countries. Now, this is very careful. You got to follow along with me here. So there is a group called ASEAN. It's an association of Southeast Asian nations. So it's Thailand and Vietnam and Indonesia and Malaysia, Singapore. And Tammy Duckworth asks Pete Hegseth to name some Asian countries. She didn't really say Asian countries. She said Asian countries. And he said South Korea, Japan. There are parts. Those are not Asian nations, you idiot. So you said name some Asian countries, and he named some Asian countries. Clearly, he thought she meant Asian countries, not Asian. The Southeast Asian Nations Association of Southeast Asian Nations. But she tried to trip him up on that. And Mike Barnacle's argument on MSNBC is that no, there's no way that the Democrats would try to embarrass Pete Hegseth. Really? That's what they're telling people on MSNBC, that the Democrats are in cahoots with the Republicans to get Pete Hegseth through the Senate. Really? That's it. Meanwhile, someone who's upset about all this is Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah, look, I got to figure there are about 250,000 women who are on active duty military service right now who are feeling pretty lonely that there is not a single Republican so far who will stand up for them and instead are willing to pass along a person to be the Secretary of Defense who has said straight up that he doesn't want to see women in combat and doesn't think that women make good soldiers.
You know, I agree with him. I'm sorry if that offends you. Notice I'm not sorry for believing it. I'm sorry if you're upset by me and Pete Hegseth believing it. I have no objection to women in the military. None whatsoever. When the men are on the front lines killing the bad guys, someone's going to need to be behind the scenes running the administrative duties and overseeing things. But yeah, I got a problem with women on the front lines. And it goes back to the video of the overweight testosterone up, it appeared, female fire DEI officer for Los Angeles who does the promo video and says, well, we want people who look like people to rescue people from fires. And if a woman ever wondered if I would be able to carry her husband out of a fire, I would wonder, well, why did he put himself in that position in the first place? To be carried out in a fire because he was rescuing his family from a burning home and got overwhelmed by the smoke, you idiot. It was an obnoxious video, but therein lies the rub. Tom Cotton was asked about this on Fox and Friends this morning and probably put it better than most.
Well, Steve, what I think Senator Gillibrand is upset about is that I was distinguishing carefully in an area where people often get confused. When they talk about women in combat, that's too broad. Women have been in combat for many years as pilots or mechanics or what have you. We're talking specifically about women in ground combat jobs like the infantry, the artillery, special forces. Those have irreducible physical demands. There's nothing that Pete Hegseth or Kirsten Gillibrand or I can do to make an artillery shell weigh less than 100 pounds or a tank round weigh less than 50 pounds or a fully grown soldier with full combat load weigh less than usually 250, even 300 pounds. We have to have high and gender neutral standards to ensure that our troops are going to be safe and they're going to be fit to fight. But the Democrats would rather impose quotas or goals to make sure we have an arbitrary number of women or other ideals in our infantry, our artillery, our special forces, as opposed to focusing on fighting effectiveness. That's what I laid out. That's what Pete Hegseth will do as Secretary of Defense. I thought he did a great job. I know you're proud of him as a former colleague and as a friend. I commend him for a great job.
Yes. Look, I have no problem with women in military roles. But the idea that a woman is equivalent to a man on the front lines of a fight is utter nonsense. This is one of the problems that some cities have run into in this country with fire and police officers, lowering the standards for a woman versus a man, as opposed to a gender-neutral standard for combat or for police action. So, for example, some fire departments in this country will make a man lift a load to certify to be a fire official, but a woman can carry a reduced load. In the real-world scenarios, it might be the man or the woman who finds the heavy body, and the man is more likely to be able to retrieve the heavy body than the woman. It's basic biology, and the left has gone off the deep end denying basic biology, but basic biology is basic biology. It's not transgender mythology. Men, because of testosterone, tend to be able to outperform women. Now, I have seen women, my wife does strongmen competitions. I say this as a man whose wife has literally pulled a UPS truck. And my wife is not taking testosterone supplements or anything like that. I will tell you what was funny is at her competition where she did this, there was a woman there who was a coach who very clearly was on a lot of testosterone. And my wife was so amazed. The lady, by the way, she was as sweet as she could be. She and her husband were both there. Yeah. Husband, they got these two dogs, just wonderful, wonderful person. But very, very, very built. And I thought it was very funny. My mother-in-law was there. My wife said, "Oh, look, it's her." And my mother-in-law's looking, she says, "Where?" And it's place like there. My mother's like, I don't where? I don't see who you're talking about. My wife's like, There. That's her. Other one's like, I thought it was a man. But in normal situations, men can lift heavy. I mean, men and women are different biologically. And the left, which claims it's pro science and that the right is anti science, have gone all anti science when it comes to biology. When it comes to basic physiology, they've gone completely off the deep end. And the idea that a woman should be on the battlefield fighting as opposed to in an assisting job where she's better used is infuriating. And the only people who really truly believe this stuff are academics and progressives. I don't care if you're a woman in the military. I don't care. I have friends who are women in the military. I have a friend who is a female in the military who can strategically launch a drone and missile and kill you. And God bless her for doing it. God bless her service. But even she is willing to recognize she does not want to be in the trenches on the front lines because the men who do that do a role that she is not as physically capable of doing as them. The only people who think otherwise are safely ensconced in the United States Senate or the faculty lounge at Harvard. And honestly, just got to lay it on the line with you. I think it is a damning indictment on our society that people would think we should be putting women on the front lines of a military engagement instead of men. I do not think it is their place. I do not think it is their role. You can call me patronizing. You can call me propping up the patriarchy. But every single last one of you who is upset about me saying that, I bet you haven't enrolled in the military and sought to be on the front lines of a fight. I haven't either. Thank God there are those who want to. But it sure does seem like the Elizabeth Warrens of the world, who would never, ever want to get her hands dirty on a battlefield, sure are ready to sign up all the women of this country to be fighters in war instead of moms at home raising the family of the next generation of Americans. I don't know why Elizabeth Warren is so interested in getting women killed or killing children as opposed to propagating our country, our species, and humanity itself. But the left these days have gone off the deep end on all sorts of ways. To Tom Cotton's point, that 100-pound shell is never going to weigh less than 100 pounds just because a woman has insisted that she should be the one to lift it. Now, we should move on before I say something that gets me in trouble. Not that there's much that I could say to get me in trouble. It is my show, after all, although you would be amazed at what some people get offended by. We actually had a caller. We didn't put him on the show, warning that if Marco Rubio has his way, he could usher in a new era of McCarthyism. McCarthy, my friends, was not as wrong as Democrats like to believe he was. Now, with banks collapsing, do you know, by the way, what it takes to get a community bank off the ground? It's virtually impossible these days, and the credit demands that the FDIC and the federal government put on them, it's almost impossible for some of these banks to sustain themselves, and they're good banks. But they're not the national banks. The national banks don't like them. Swiss America's been warning about all these banking problems. They've been warning people about a secret war on cash. If you're interested in safeguarding your cash, you need to get Swiss America's free report on the secret war on cash. They're rated A+ by the Better Business Bureau. They can help you. They've been the trusted leader of precious metals 40 years in this country. You get the report. It takes less than 15 minutes to read. Saves you on your retirement and finances. You get it by calling or texting 800-289-2646. All you have to do is mention my name, Erick, E-R-I-C-K. Call the number or text my name to 800-289-2646. That's 800-289-2646. Message and data rates may apply.
When the world seems crazy, he'll keep you sane. It's the Erick Erickson Show.
Welcome back. It's Erick Erickson across the nation. The phone number 877-973-7425. Very important housekeeping note for you. Governor Ron DeSantis is going to join me at the bottom of the third hour. If you're listening to the show live, that will be 2:35 p.m. He has called the Florida legislature to special session to deal with deportation of illegal immigrants, and he will be joining me live at 2:35 p.m. to talk about it. Right now, Mike, you're going to be up first today. Welcome. Thank you. Thanks. No. Well, no, actually, Elizabeth Warren has authored legislation to make women sign up for selective service. Yeah. She wants women to be drafted. Yeah, that was a big deal last year. Yeah, I got to admit, I was a little bit surprised. She and Joni Ernst is the one who surprised me. Now she was in the military, but I was surprised that they wanted women to be drafted, and I fought it, and it died. Chip Roy in the House blocked it from getting into national defense reauthorization. But yeah, Elizabeth Warren actually wants women to be drafted into war. She supports adding women to the selective service. Brian in Dayton, Ohio, you're up next. Welcome. Hmm. Right. Amen. Yeah. Yeah, listen, you're absolutely right, and the fact that they want to lower standards so that a woman can pass a modified test, but I mean, and there are actually a lot of men who can't. I don't know that I ever could have. I didn't start CrossFit until I was later in life, and my goodness, like every single person I go to CrossFit with is a firefighter. They really like it for that conditioning for firefighting. Firefighters very very active in the CrossFit community because of it, and that you talk to them, they do not want standards lowered because then they feel like they'll be rescuing not just the people in a burning house, but also the firefighters who weren't up to snuff. This hour of the program brought to you by First Liberty Building and Loan. If you are looking to capitalize your business this year, you see a horizon where things look good for your business and you need to talk to someone about future funding, well, reach out to First Liberty Building and Loan. They've been doing this since the 90s. They would love to help your business grow. See if you're a fit for them. See if they're a fit for you. FirstLibertyGA.com. All their contact info is there. FirstLibertyGA.com. FirstLibertyGA.com. Tell them I sent you, the Frost family. They're great people. When we come back, the left is having to abandon TikTok. Where are they going? More Chinese communist products by design. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls across the fruited plain, thank you for tuning in. It's Erick Erickson here. Ron DeSantis joins me an hour and a half from now. The phone number, if you want to join me, 877-973-7425. I'll get to your phone calls here in a bit. A lot of people chiming in on women in the military, and I'm happy to take those phone calls. There is breaking news I've got to bring you up to speed with, though. Hamas and Israel have agreed to a ceasefire. We are expecting hostages to be released soon. Likewise, a number of Palestinians who have been arrested by Israel will be released. Many of them Hamas operatives. And that is the price Israel must pay. They didn't start this. And you know what? I need to just let me get a recorder going, because Philip, you're asking me what to put up. This isn't going to be long, but this is what you got to run with. War is hell and unfair. War is awful. What is lost in so many of the conversations by the anti-Semites of our press and academy and by politicians and globally is that Israel did not ask for this war. Israel was at peace on the morning of October 7th, 2023. Hamas parachuted in, helicoptered in, went over the border. Israel had gotten complacent, was relying on electronic surveillance of its border with Gaza. And I say its border with Gaza because, contrary to the propaganda campaign, Israel was not in Gaza. And the terrorists took advantage, went across the border, killed about 2,000 Israeli citizens, and took hundreds hostage. Many of those hostages have been murdered. They were held in the homes of Palestinians. They were held in what purported to be hospitals and elsewhere. Many of them murdered. 33 hostages are left, and they will be released. Some of them were toddlers when they were taken, their parents murdered and the children taken. Somehow, much of the elite world opinion is that the Israelis are to blame. And using sympathetic members of the press, Israel's enemies seeded a lie that Israel was engaged in a genocide in Gaza, amplified on 60 Minutes by former State Department employees, one of whom left the State Department and joined an anti-Israel, anti-Jewish group. They hate the Jews. They say it's about Israel, and it always comes back to the Jews, and they hate the Jews. I followed a guy on Instagram for a time until last night. Seemed to be a little odd, but not a bad guy. We had interacted some. Nothing was off. And then I've noticed more and more he was virulently anti-Israel. But that anti-Israel, pro-Gaza sentiment turned into anti-Jewish sentiment. What I found very notable was after the war started and as it went on, it was no longer about Israel and injustices of Israel and maybe things that Israel had done. It was about the Jews. Last night, going through reels on Instagram, and his account came up, and the very first reel was a picture of Mark Zuckerberg on Joe Rogan's show, and he put a screenshot of it up with the text, "Why is Mark Zuckerberg so disgusting?" And then there was a funny reel, and then another funny reel, and then there was another picture of Mark Zuckerberg with a screenshot of Google. Is Mark Zuckerberg Jewish? Yes, Mark Zuckerberg is Jewish. Google chimed in, and underneath it, the guy had typed the text, well, that explains it. "100% of the time, 100% of the time, anti-Israeli sentiment turns out that these people just hate Jews. You want affirmation that the Old Testament is real? You want affirmation when Jesus says the things of the world hate the things of God? I actually believe that the church replaces Israel in the Old Testament. But I believe that history echoes, and I don't think it's a coincidence that so many of the people who hate Christians also hate Jews. God's chosen people of the Old Testament, the world hates the things of God. That's reflected in the Old Testament and the New. And the Jewish people are despised by people who hate the Lord God Almighty, maker of heaven and earth. It is always interesting to me how whenever anyone chimes in with hatred of Israel, it always turns out to be hatred of Jews. And what surprises me even more are the number of Jewish people I know who try to split the baby on this. They summon their inner King Solomon, and no, really, it's the Israeli government that's bad. If only Benjamin Netanyahu wasn't there, they would like us. No, it's very clear in the conversations at this point. Those of you who say these things and you're Jewish, you should wake up about the anti-Semitism that is around you, because they just hate you because you're Jewish. It's easy right now for people to use the Netanyahu excuse, say, oh, they hate us because of Netanyahu. I hear this all the time from people. It's not the Jewish people I hate, it's just Netanyahu. You keep them talking long enough and they turn out to be an anti-Semite. It's just remarkable, time and time again. And so here we get to this point where there is a deal now, a ceasefire between Hamas and Israel, a ceasefire in a war that Israel did not choose, a ceasefire in a war that Israel did not want, a ceasefire in a war that Israel did not see coming. And yet it rose in arms and wiped out its enemies. And now the remnant of the organization that started this war on October 7th is willing to give up the 30 some odd remaining hostages out of hundreds it took and murdered. And there's not a damn soul in the American press corps that wants to say, hey, why is it only 33? No, nobody really wants to point that out. Why is it only 33 or so that Israel will get? I thought there were more than 100. Was it misinformation? Was it disinformation? No. Hamas killed those people in some cases, putting them where they knew the Israelis would attack, so that Israel was killing its own citizens. And you want to charge Israel with war crimes? That worthless piece of waste of oxygen human being in charge of the International Criminal Court, who decided to charge the Israeli government members, Netanyahu and others, with war crimes. You know, he's running in Lebanon now. Turns out he did it as a political stunt because he had to prove how much he hated Israel to run in Lebanon. I hope a stray missile lands somewhere near him, honestly. What a garbage human being, anti-Semite. Israel has to put up with this. Yesterday, protesters in Washington, D.C. protested the hearing on Pete Hegseth, yelling that he was a Christian Zionist. He's a Christian who believes the Jewish people deserve a nation state of their own in their historic homeland. And he's right. I guess I'm a Christian Zionist. Unlike the lies you hear by the left, I know history. The Jews were in the land of Canaan as an established, united people well before anyone called the Palestinian got there. The Palestinian is a Roman construct when the Romans chased the Jews out of Judah, which the Romans called Judea. There's far more archaeological evidence for an ancient Jewish people living in the Jewish homeland than there is for the Palestinians, who are a group of Arab tribes who to this day don't get along with each other, but are labeled together as Palestinians for the sake of geopolitical convenience. You're absolutely right. The Jews deserve their own country, because what we're seeing is every other country is run by a bunch of anti-Semites, including this one with Joe Biden and Joe Biden's team in the White House. Did you catch the 60 Minutes interview? The State Department is infested with a bunch of anti-Semites who hate Israel and hate the Jews. And they've been calling the shots inside the State Department. They've been leaking information to Israel's opponents. Remember, Israel couldn't share its plans on how it intended to respond to Hezbollah and to Iran, because it knew that anti-Semites inside the Biden administration would tell Iran, would tip off Iran. I can't recall any other situation where people working within an American political administration would want to share with our enemies' plans, because the enemy of their enemy are the Jews. And now Israel has to suffer through handing back terrorists to Hamas in order to rescue the last 33 living Israeli hostages. And it seems to be a plan Israel didn't really want, and they were bullied into it by the Trump administration, incoming Trump administration, to resolve the situation before Trump got there. And by the way, you should know, behind the scenes, everyone is acknowledging, including on MSNBC, that it was the incoming Trump team that was the persuasive element to get Netanyahu to agree to a deal, that Biden couldn't get him to agree to it, but Trump did. So Trump will have a peace deal, but it's not exactly the best deal, because they were going to have this all over again, because guess what? Israel's got to release some of the terrorists who wish to exterminate the Jewish people. We'll have peace again in the Middle East, but for how long? There is one, in my mind, funny side note to all of this, and that is Iran, despite its best lies, we all know Iran was culpable and played a role in Hamas doing what it did on October 7th, providing funding, providing training, providing guidance. And look at the situation now. Hezbollah has collapsed. Hamas has collapsed. Syria is collapsed. Iran knows, and has always known, it did not have the strength to take on Israel itself. Historically, the Persian kingdom couldn't even take on God Almighty himself, let alone God's people. Iran knows history. Iran knew it couldn't take on Israel, so it built up 3 proxies to take on Israel for it: Hamas, Hezbollah, and Syria. Hamas, Hezbollah, and Syria are vanquished by the Jewish people, who have worked mighty hard to keep themselves free. There are a lot of people who lie about Israel. There are a lot of people who lie about Jews. There are a lot of people who want you to believe Israelis are not free, despite Israeli Arabs being able to get elected to office, despite a history of it, despite the freedoms in Israel. These people would have you believe that Israel is some sort of despotic regime. These are the mouthpieces for terror. These are the defenders of horror. These are the protectors of monsters. You know, I'm a Christian, and I believe that the only path to salvation is to put your trust in Jesus, to have eternal life with God. But I also believe that if you're an anti-Semite and you hate the Jewish people and you harbor and protect the monsters of Hamas, you are their apologists and defenders, then on that last day, it will be too late for you, and there will be a very hot place in a lake of fire for you, because you have not just denied the Lord your God, you have actively enabled the monsters. Anti-Semites should be driven from polite society. And I would love to play a role in doing that in some capacity. And to the degree I have this radio program and this microphone, I can at least say, you're not welcome here.
When the world seems crazy, he'll keep you sane. It's
Buddy of mine sent me a quote from Golda Meir, such a good one. When peace comes, we will perhaps in time be able to forgive the Arabs for killing our sons, but it will be harder for us to forgive them for having forced us to kill their sons. Peace will come when the Arabs will love their children more than they hate us. It's true. It's absolutely true. You know, when I was a kid growing up overseas, all references to Israel were redacted from textbooks. You couldn't make a phone call to Israel. You couldn't fly to Israel, and you couldn't come into the country had you been to Israel. The Israelis never cared. The Arabs cared deeply. I never, the very first time I ever saw an Israeli flag, I was in ninth grade in Greece on a class trip. I hate that Israel has to release terrorists to get its Israeli citizens back, but that's the nature of the deal. So they'll do it. At least those poor children will be out of the hands of monsters, back into the hands of a people who love them. All right. Well, I'll take you. Those of you on hold here, please be with me. I'll take your phone calls in a minute. First, I got to tell you about Vision Computer. 404 Compute is their number. If you're interested in a technology purchase this year, you should reach out to Vision. If you need a PC, a desktop, or a laptop, they can build it for you. They can take your existing computer setup, transfer it to the new computer setup. So your new computer is just like the old computer, except it doesn't have the viruses. It's fast. It's got an AI capable GPU. It's got all the things you want in a new computer. Vision can make it happen for you. VisionComputers.com or 404 Compute. If you tell them I sent you, you're going to get an even better deal. Now, here's the thing. They've also got 5-star world-class tech support. And you don't have to have one of their computers to get their tech support. All you have to do is sign up for it. Call them at 404 Compute and get it. You'll literally be given a special number you can call whenever you have an issue with your computer, and Vision will take care of you. They can even remote in. It saves your company money. You don't have to have an in-house IT guy. You just have Vision. 404 Compute or VisionComputers.com. Tell them I sent you. 404 Compute, anywhere nationwide, can take advantage of this. Y'all, I want to take phone calls here. Give me like a minute, 30 seconds, and I'm going to go to phone calls. You know how often we are lectured by the Catholic bishops and the Pope about illegal immigration, and we should be okay with illegal immigration, and mass deportations are bad, and securing our borders bad. We get all these left-wing bishops, and the Pope himself want to lecture Americans on what to do with our border. I bring you this from the Catholic News Agency. Quote, the Vatican City State has toughened sanctions for those who try to illegally enter its territory in areas where free access is not allowed. How can this be, you hypocrites? Maybe stop lecturing us on our border security when you yourselves are dealing with your border security in the Vatican. I'm no fan of this Pope. I wish Benedict was still around. All right. To the phones we go. Raheem, you're going to be up first. Thanks for being patient with me. Welcome to the Erick Erickson Show. Thank you. Thank you very, very much. I'm going to get hate mail, but it's true. Mm-hmm. 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 Listen, I'm glad that you could call in and share this. First of all, thank you for your service, and two, that you can call in. This is real world, firsthand experience, ladies and gentlemen. Not my opinion, not me echoing. It's the person who was there. So, Reem, thank you very much for that. That was fantastic to hear, and I have heard stories like that. But I mean, this is y'all. We just heard from someone who experienced this. Now, Pierce, you're going to be up next. Welcome to the show. How are you? Great. Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah. Right. Yeah. Look, and for those of you in Rio Linda, when Pierce says hum in the mountains, he means like, well, hike in the mountains, people. Just those of you in Rio, we gotta. But to to listen, you know what they do out there in Rio Linda. So Pierce, to the point though, it's the idea, like, and what the left has a real hard time with in this is say, well, like, for example, I just saw someone reply to me on social media. Do you know that 25% of Ukraine's army is women? Well, they've been invaded by Russia. They needed all hands on deck. They don't have the population base that we have, and also they have far fewer women on the front lines in Ukraine than the left seems to think. In this country, we have plenty of men who can fill those roles. We shouldn't have to have a woman on the front lines because the physical impossibility of being able to lift. There's a difference between drone warfare in Ukraine and actually tank shells in the United States. Right. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Yeah, it makes a ton of sense to be able to do it that way. Look, Pierce, listen, I appreciate the phone call. I mean, real world experiences there, y'all, and I really do think so. In the House of Representatives, they have been fighting over boys and girls sports, and it is kind of odd to me. So Molly Hemingway, who writes at the Federalist, friend of mine, she commented last night, who really is it that wants women on frontline combat positions? Because I don't know anybody. I, honest to God, do not know a single person who actually wants a woman in a frontline combat position in the military. The academics, Elizabeth Warren clearly does. Kristen Gillibrand of New York really does. But in the real world, I actually don't know a single person in my circle of friends, left, right, and center, and I got liberal friends too. I don't know a single one of them who actually supports putting women in frontline combat positions. It's just a very academic thing for people to get worked up about in Washington, D.C. that no one else seems to really want to get worked up about. And here's AOC yesterday on the floor of the House getting all worked up about people who don't want boys and girls sports.
Also opens the door for is for women to try to perform a very specific kind of femininity for the very kind of men who are drafting this bill, and to open up questioning of who is a woman because of how we look, how we present ourselves, and yes, what we choose to do with our bodies. I know who loves this bill. Yes, bigoted folks love this bill. Assaulters love this bill. But also, CEOs love this bill. Because Los Angeles is on.
I audio crap out there at the end from C-SPAN, but that's okay. CEOs love this bill. CEOs love this bill. This bill is a piece of legislation that prohibits boys from being in girl sports, and it passed. And only 2 Democrats supported the legislation. Only 2 Democrats supported the legislation, which to me is actually kind of insane that only 2 Democrats would support common sense legislation. And AOC is bigoted folks like this. This is, by the way, how the left uses folks. They don't like to say people. They don't like to say men and women, folks. It's just folks. It's become one of the new terms on the left that they love to say folks. And by the way, many of them spell with an X on the end for reasons that would just hurt your brain. I don't actually know a human being who is a liberal who supports this. It's just a bubble of insanity. And, if you look at the exit polling data from the election, the overwhelming majority of Americans support girls and girl sports and boys not being there. Most Americans support women in the military. I myself support women in the military. But when you ask people if women should be on the front lines of active combat, most Americans say no. And yet the left just constantly wants to move the Overton window on this to try to get to some level of acceptability for madness. It is social madness to think that a boy can be a girl. It's social madness to go down this road. And yet that's where the left is going in this country. And they've just become insane on this stuff and so out of touch with Americans. And here's my caution to those of you on the right. These idiots will take back power if we on our side don't improve the economy. Day one for the Trump administration must be about fixing the economy, and the better off people are, the less likely it is that people like AOC get back in power. Because Americans will give you a license for a lot of insane things if they think the other side is hurting them economically. And the public will give Republicans a license to do a lot of great things if they fix the economy. But these people will be back in charge if the economy doesn't improve and improve quickly. There's a lesson there for Republicans you got to remember as we move forward. Now, I got to put something on your radar. If you go to own.oldglorybank.com. I am a customer of Old Glory Bank. I like Old Glory Bank. They really are my bank. I have checking and savings account with them. You do home loans with them. I want to say home loans and mortgages, but that's the same thing. Lines of credit or lines of equity. You can do business loans with them, car loans with them, but you can also invest Old Glory Bank. So let me explain to you what they're doing. Old Glory Bank has customers in 50 states. And they're raising capital through allowing people to buy stock in Old Glory Bank, but they're bypassing Wall Street because they explicitly set themselves up as a conservative bank for conservatives. Now, anybody can use Old Glory Bank, but they're very mindful of what progressives are doing, which is they're buying up shares in banking institutions, and then they're using their shareholder clout to force those banks into debanking conservatives, prohibiting them from doing business with gun stores and gun dealers and gun manufacturers. And Old Glory wants to avoid a left-wing takeover through the purchase of shares. So they're avoiding Wall Street in their capitalization, and they've set up a website, own.oldglorybank.com. You have the opportunity to invest in the bank that's investing in freedom. You can put your money where your values are, purchase freely tradable stock of Old Glory Holding Company. To consider ownership, go to own.oldglorybank.com. Owning stock has risks, is not FDIC insured. Terms and conditions apply. I have invested in Old Glory Bank. Putting my money where my mouth is. I really do like Old Glory Bank. You should do your banking there at oldglorybank.com. But if you're interested in investing as well, own.oldglorybank.com.
He'll do the research and give it to you straight. Erick Erickson is live every weekday.
Delighted to have you with me today. So, real quick. And by the way, Governor Ron DeSantis is going to join me in about 35 minutes to talk about the special session he's calling in Florida. Amy Coney Barrett is the Associate Justice in the United States Supreme Court. She's she was the newest member of the court. Ketanji Brown Jackson is now the newest. They're having a hearing today over Pornhub and other pornographic websites. Texas has become the latest state to pass an age verification law requiring that people do something to actually legitimately verify their age. You know, if you go to like an alcohol site, you go to Calumet Bourbon or something like that, you got to say, are you 21? And you click yes, you get in. That's what the pornography websites want. So you can just lie and say yes. And what Texas says and what other states say is that actually, no, you've got to actually be able to prove it that you're over the age of 18 to access pornography. Because, you know, if you go to a website for marijuana, alcohol, cigarettes, tobacco, whatever, you can't actually get the product on the website. But you go to a pornography website, you're getting the product on the website. And it's been wild to hear the left on the Supreme Court think this is okay. Amy Coney Barrett, though, the Pornhub lawyer was essentially saying, you know, there is content protection on the internet. There are apps you can install if you don't want your kid to get at pornography. There are apps you can install. Amy Coney Barrett has 5 kids. And she interrupts guys. She's like, are you really trying to tell us that those are as good as a actual age verification system to access the website? And the guy's like, well, yes. She's like, really? You're really trying to tell us this? And Brett Kavanaugh jumps in and is like, every parent on this panel can tell you they're not the same. It was very funny to hear them led by her, the parents on the Supreme Court, like, we know better because we're parents. And, you know, there's something to be said for having parents on the Supreme Court with an issue like this. We'll be right back. Ron DeSantis in about 30 minutes here on the program. Greetings, conversationalists. It is Erick Erickson here across the nation. The phone number is 877-973-7425. If you want to be on the program, Connie, hold on for a minute. I want to get to you down in Orlando, but there's some breaking news. The president addressing the nation on the ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas. Let's jump in mid-press conference. Who did that, though? Who did that? Not because of anything you did. Duh. How? Why? Okay, listen. Yeah, there's a peace deal, and Gaza can get back to it. I don't know why we're contributing money to rebuild Gaza so we can make it safe for terrorists again. I don't know. God bless it. The hostages will be released, the bodies returned. But that statement and I'm sorry, it should be a good day. But for him to say, "Oh, we can get to this peace deal because Hamas is destroyed and Hezbollah is destroyed and Iran can do us." Why? Why? Because Israel did something that you didn't want them to do. That's the infuriating part of this whole thing, for Biden to stand on stage reading from a teleprompter and say, we can get this peace deal because Hamas is destroyed and Hezbollah is destroyed and Iran is weakened. Yes, because Israel ignored you, Joe Biden, and blew them to smithereens, and you didn't want Israel to do it. And here you are said, oh, because all of these groups are now vanquished, we get this peace deal. Yes. And that was the point Israel made the entire time. You didn't want them to do what they did, and now they ignored you. They went to war and won. You get a peace deal, and you're like, oh, yes, all the bad guys are destroyed, and now I was able to get Israel to agree to a peace deal because the bad guys were destroyed by Israel doing what you told Israel not to do. Had Israel listened to you, there would still be a war and the hostages would probably all be dead. Just that gets my blood pressure up. You know what? I'm done with Biden. Done with him. The rest of the country will be in a few days. I want to go talk to Connie instead in Orlando, Florida. Connie, welcome to the show. You're going to be the last caller today on this particular issue, but I'm happy to have you. Oh, wait. You just called the president of the United States a celery stalk, and I am kicking myself for not having thought of that myself. Well, thank you for doing it. That's such a good point. Okay. Gosh, Connie. I mean, talk about my frail ego here. For you come up with celery stalk for Joe Biden, and now you're making a point I wish I had made. But you're right. You're absolutely right. It's like you put you put parents in a situation with a bunch of people who are in trouble. What's a parent going to do? They're going to protect their kids over everybody else first. You put men and women in combat together. Many of the men, because of their natural instincts, are going to want to protect the women. And yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I do. And it's so well said. And you'll be pleased to know as well that I can't go back to the celery stalk because he is now exited through the door. Kamala Harris let him out. Yeah, at least listen. At least I didn't make you listen to her. Connie, listen, a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much. And that is an excellent point. Progressives get so upset when you just talk about these basic things. Now I'm going to make some of you really mad because I'm going to drag a little bit of theology into it. Because it's one of the most misinterpreted outside of casting the first stones nonsense. So in the very beginning of the Bible, God tells Eve, your desire will be for your husband. And a lot of people have willfully misinterpreted that, is that women, they'll just fall over themselves to be submissive to their husbands. That's not actually what it means. What it actually means is that a woman's desire after the fall would be to rule over men, to lord it over them, to dominate them. Now, how do I know that that's the case? Because if you flip a chapter or two over, where Cain kills Abel. The same phrase is used about sin and Cain, that sin's desire will be for Cain, sin's desire will be for him. And it's the same phrase in Hebrew. And it is that sin's desire will be to dominate Cain. In the same way, the same phrase is used for women. So we know, and by the way, it was not in dispute. It was not even challenged until the late 1800s by atheist scholars and the rise of the feminist movement in the early 1900s. That they decided to invent a novel interpretation of something that for 4,000 years had been interpreted very consistently. And we see this with progressivism and feminists in the progressive movement. They want to lord it over everybody else. And one of the ways they want to lord it over everybody else is to insert women into spheres where women don't belong. Now, perversely, they also want to insert men into places that men don't belong, like women's bathrooms and girls' sports. I mean, it is never not going to be funny to me that Bruce Jenner changes his name to Caitlyn and undergoes cosmetic surgery to make himself look like a woman, and he's given a Woman of the Year award. It will never not be funny to me that they constantly on the left, in the media and in cultural institutions, when men become women, they give those men prizes that would have otherwise gone to women, which means that even on the left, they believe that men are better at being women than women are. It is absolutely hilarious to me that we are in this situation. And we are in a situation where the left intends to break down every cultural institution. And they've gotten to a point now where they can't even allow women a sphere to be women. They hate the idea of the all men's club. Now they hate the idea of women having safe places for women to be women. You got to allow the men in there as long as the men identify as women. They can't even anymore describe what a woman is. There was a great comedy skit I saw on Instagram the other day. It was a little boy at a spelling bee, and the word was woman. And the little boy says, "Woman, can you define it?" And the manager says, no, I cannot define woman. And the little boy says, well, the rule says I can ask for a definition. And the miss, not this word, you cannot, not this word. And there's a black lady sitting next to him, and he says, and the lady says, you know what? So a woman is, a woman is, and the man chimes in again, what she's trying to say is, a woman is someone who feels like a woman. And the little boy says, well, the definition means you can't use the word to define the word. Can you define the word without using the word? No, I cannot. Yes, you should be able to, but not with the left. They can't tell you what that word means anymore. They've degraded what it means to be a woman so much. It's just, what a brave new world we are in. Welcome back. It's Erick Erickson here. Cannot take any more of your phone calls. I appreciate the ones we had today. Really good phone calls. I can't take any more because we've only got a couple of minutes before Governor Ron DeSantis joins me. He has released a framework for what he wants in his special session in Florida. By the way, for those of you listening up in Tennessee, your governor, Bill Lee, also has called a special session of the legislature. In Florida, it's about mass deportations of illegal aliens. In Tennessee, it's about passing school choice. Actually reached out to, I know, Bill Lee's chief of staff and invited Governor Lee on the show as well to talk about that one. A big deal in Florida, though, this, and Governor DeSantis has released a platform of what he wants the special session to include. Law enforcement compliance, mandating maximum participation in the program to round up illegal aliens, criminal penalties for illegal entry, state immigration enforcement officers appointing a designated officer to oversee coordination with federal authorities and the unauthorized alien transport program, unauthorized alien transport program to be expanded to detain and facilitate the deportation of illegal aliens, gang enforcement, broaden the legal definition of gang-related activities to include more groups of dangerous illegal aliens, educational and voting reform, remittance and financial oversight, mandating identity verification for foreign remittance transfers, and bail and flight risk presumptions create a rebuttable presumption that illegal aliens are a flight risk and deny them bail. That is what Ron DeSantis wants from his special session. He's going to join me here in about 7 minutes to talk about this special session. I am intrigued by what he wants. I'm also intrigued by the state House Speaker Perez say no, there's no need for a special session. It can wait now 48 days until the legislature in Florida begins. Governor DeSantis has disagreed and called the special session with this package. So I want to ask him out of the gate, why not wait until the legislative session begins? And why call a special session for these sorts of things? Why now? Let him answer those, talk about the proposals, and it should be a great conversation coming up. Governor Ron DeSantis joining me in about 6 minutes to talk about these things. Right now, I need to talk to you about Americans for Prosperity because they're one of the conservative groups out there advocating many of the things that Governor DeSantis is pushing the state legislature to endorse in Florida, and also advocating for school choice in states like Tennessee. They've advocated for it in Georgia. They believe in common sense conservative reforms around the country, that common sense conservatism improves the lives of families and small businesses and individuals. And they would love to have you partner with them. They have chapters in just about every single state now. And you may be able to help them in your state. If there's not one, you may be able to help them grow one. All you have to do is go to americansforprosperity.org and sign up with AFP. You learn more about them there. They can teach you how to be a door knocker so you can go to your neighbor and provide them all the information your neighbor needs to be persuaded that common sense conservative reforms are the best thing for this country. You'll be able to learn how to go to your state legislature or even your local government to advocate for common sense conservative reforms. And you'll be part of an army of activists around the country advocating for freedom, for families, for small government, for school choice. All you have to do is go to americansforprosperity.org. Americansforprosperity.org. I'm actually doing an event for AFP at the end of next week. I'll be out next Friday doing an event for them. Great group of people. They'd love to have you join them. Americansforprosperity.org. Welcome back across the nation. It's Erick Erickson here. The phone number 877-973-7425. If you text Erick, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777, you can get all the links to the show, the live stream, the podcast. Pam Bondi testifying before the Senate Judiciary Committee. Peter Welch, one of the Democrats on the committee, singing her praises, saying she did a very good job answering their questions, and that, of course, Donald Trump will get someone compatible with him. Now, she is the former Attorney General down in Florida, and joining me by phone is the current governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis. Welcome to the show, sir. How are you? Great. So I need to ask you a question just real quick before I get into the special session, and that is, where do your thinking stand now on time frame for a possible appointment to replace Marco Rubio? I was just going to say, I mean, if you want to break some news, um, that right. Right. That makes sense. Okay, so let's get into this special session on illegal immigration. First of all, I know the Speaker of the House had said he thought this could wait for 50 days to the legislature. You went on and you're calling the special session. So why, in your mind, can it wait? Now, you've released a graphic on social media with eight issues that the session proposals would include. One of which, in fact, is the very first one: law enforcement compliance, mandate maximum participation in the deportation program with penalties for noncompliance. I think that's one thing that a lot of people maybe not appreciate about our federal system is that the feds can't just commandeer state and local law enforcement, and in some parts of states, including Florida, seems like there is some reluctance in more progressive areas to actually do the right thing on this. Hmm. Wow. One of the other issues in your list is gang enforcement to broaden the legal definition of gang related activities. I know a lot of states use RICO to go after gangs and stuff, but what do you have in mind for expanding the legal definition of gang related activities? Hmm. Yeah, that's the okay. That is actually part of our immigration system that has always baffled me. That you see these scenes in the news where they're desperate. The Coast Guard is to keep them from getting the land, and it just that seems like that's one of the common sense areas where everyone should agree for reform, and yet Democrats don't want to. Mm-hmm. Governor, I want to ask you one question off topic before you leave. And for folks at home, I don't pre-screen or give out there everything I want to talk to the governor about, but I know you can handle this. Your state got hit this past year, by a number of major hurricanes. And every time there was national lecturing in the press about how, the governor of Florida denies climate change, blah, 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 true or not, it didn't matter. They were going to lecture. And now there's this horrible natural disaster in California. And the people in the press who wanted to lecture America about Floridians, Republicans, and climate change seem to use it as an absolute shield to suggest that there's nothing any Democratic politician could have done to mitigate damage, when it's kind of remarkable how Floridians have spent years burying utilities and taking steps to mitigate possible damage. And the environmentalists in California don't seem to want anybody to do that. And just was interested in your comment on this seeming double standard and how you get treated in a natural disaster versus your governor of California. Mm-hmm. It's well said. Governor, thanks for stopping by. I appreciate you doing this on the spur of the moment, and good luck in the special session. Thank you. Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida will have a special session convened within 2 weeks after Donald Trump becomes president. Before I jump out, I got to tell you about the Eden Pure Gen 40 heater that I've got running in my office right now because it was frigid in here until I turned it on. You can operate on remote control. It uses 2 different ways to heat the room: convection and also infrared heating systems. And not only that, you can also turn off the heating component. Just use it as a floor fan in areas where you're not supposed to have a heater in the office. It's your floor fan, and it works. It genuinely, I'm in a massive room with very high ceilings, and it works to keep me warm in the cold when the building air conditioner doesn't, and it saves you money, reducing your heating bills. You can get $50 off an already great price by going to EdenPureDeals.com today and use the discount code ERICK50, ERICK50, EdenPureDeals.com. You get $50 off the Gen 40 sale price with a discount code. It oscillates, it works with remote control, it heats with infrared, with convection as well. It will warm you up, and in the summer, it will help keep you cool with just the air circulating. EdenPureDeals.com. The discount code ERICK50, ERICK50. Yes, you will. In the know. Text data to 33777 or data, whichever way you want to say it. 33777. Click that first link and sign up for the show notes. You will every day when the show starts. Get all the list of stuff I told you. And, today you'll be able to see how much more I was going to talk about that I didn't get to with all the breaking news. We've got the Israel-Hamas ceasefire deal pending Israeli cabinet approval. We've got Pam Bondi's testimony today, John Ratcliffe, we weren't able to get to. We got the Secretary of Energy nominee, who, by the way, getting praises from Democrats and Republicans, even as climate activists were attacking him. And Chuck Schumer, of course, sounding the alarm on the would-be energy secretary who's going to be confirmed. Why? Because Chuck Schumer is upset that the energy secretary believes we need to unleash American energy potential instead of restraining it. Wild to see the Democrats essentially saying they want us held hostage to the demands of China, but this is where we are in this country. There's a lot of stuff in the show notes today that I wasn't able to get to with everything else happening. Thanks to Ron DeSantis for stopping by. Text data to 33777 to get the show notes, and also don't forget the podcast if you missed my conversation with Governor DeSantis. Talk to you guys tomorrow.